Suggestions for teaching, applying social cognitive theory in the classroom. Include the development of self-regulated learning skills in your objectives and lesson plans. The research that we've summarized clearly shows that student-regulated learning skills make a significant contribution to students' achievements. Okay, student-regulated, self-regulated. But this same research also suggests that students should not be given responsibility for their own learning without adequate preparation. Consequently, the development of students' SRL skills should be included in your instructional objectives and lesson plans. You can help students become more effective self-regulated learners by incorporating the following elements into your classroom instruction. Emphasize the importance of SRL skills to learning and when they should be used. In all likelihood, you will want students to attain some degree of proficiency in goal setting, planning, use of tactics and strategies, monitoring of one's actions and progress, self-evaluation, and self-reinforcement. When teaching planning skills, for example, point out that students who are good planners know the conditions under which they learn best and choose or arrange environments that eliminate or decrease distractions. To raise students' awareness of the value of a good learning environment, you can have them keep a log of how much time they spend studying in various places and at various times, what internal and external distractions they experience, and how they deal with those distractions. On the basis of this information, they can draw conclusions about when and under what circumstances they best learn. To help students choose or create a hospitable learning environment, you can prepare and distribute a checklist of desirable features. Likely features of a good learning environment would include relative quiet, good lighting and ventilation, and comfortable furniture. It would be best not to include other people, a television set, and alternative reading materials such as comic books or magazines. Self-regulated learners commonly use many types of memory and comprehension tactics. You can help students appreciate the value of these skills by using such techniques as mnemonic devices, outlines, concept maps, previews, graphs, flowcharts, and tables as you teach, and by explaining how they are used and the ways in which they aid learning. To increase the probability that students will use such techniques themselves, teach them how to make outlines before they write essays, and show them how to create concept maps, graphs, flowcharts, and tables after they have read a section of text. Lastly, continually remind students that self-regulated behavior is the product of self-motivational beliefs as well as various cognitive skills. The success of any instruction you will provide on SRL skills will greatly depend on students' beliefs about their self-efficacy and the basic nature of their learning ability. As we discuss in more detail in Chapter 11, many students believe that they have inherited a certain capacity to learn that cannot be changed. Such students are much less likely to engage in SRL behaviors after a failure or two. Model SRL skills, including the standards you use to evaluate your performance and reinforce yourself. You can enhance the learning of SRL skills by having students observe and imitate what you and other skilled learners do. As noted, when you demonstrate a skill or process, you should first explain what you are going to do. Then take time to describe why you are going to do it and how you will evaluate the quality of your performance. Then demonstrate the behavior, evaluate your performance, and if you feel your behavior has met your standards, verbally administer some self-praise. The importance of modeling thought processes that are normally hidden from observation was noted by Margaret Metzger, a high school English teacher. To help students better understand the process of literary interpretation and criticism, she recommended a procedure in which she led some students through a discussion of a story while other students observed and took notes on the process. Provide guided practice and corrective feedback for the SRL skills you want students to learn, presumably all of them. As we noted earlier in this chapter, self-observation or self-monitoring is an important SRL skill that plays a role at several points in the learning process. Self-regulating students are very proficient at monitoring their progress in meeting goals, the effectiveness of their learning strategies and tactics, and the quality of their achievements. They do this by comparing their performance both to internal standards and external feedback. Once you have explained and demonstrated self-monitoring, give students structured opportunities to practice this skill and provide feedback. To familiarize your students with the process of self-monitoring, you can require them to keep a log or journal in which they state goals, note how they prepare for and address the demands of projects, homeworks, and other tasks, and assess the extent to which they have achieved one or more goals. Students could record, for example, how much time they spent on a task, the types of tactics they used, the number of problems they worked, and the extent to which they felt they understood the material. When you think of feedback, you probably think of teachers giving students information about how well they performed on a recent project, performance, or exam. Examples of this type of feedback include, "Yes, that's right, and it was particularly well done," or "Sorry, that's not right. Here's what it should have been." This type of general feedback is certainly beneficial. It has been shown to have strong positive effects on achievement, but it does have a limitation. It frequently does not carry over to other tasks. That drawback can be reduced to some extent by also giving students specific feedback about how certain tactics, processes, or approaches help the student produce an acceptable response, or how failing to use certain tactics or approaches led to a less desirable result. You might, for example, comment on how closely a student followed your directions, constructed a concept map that identified the interrelationships among a set of concepts from a reading assignment, or reviewed her work in an effort to identify mistakes. Evidence suggests that this type of feedback leads to a deeper understanding of the task and more transfer to other learning tasks. The increased use of self-regulatory skills on other tasks is likely due to a strengthening of students' self-efficacy, and they're attributing successful performances to effort and ability. Teach students how to use both memory and comprehension tactics and to take notes. Teach students how to use various forms of rehearsal and mnemonic devices. We have at least two reasons for recommending the teaching of rehearsal. One is that maintenance rehearsal is a useful tactic for keeping a relatively small amount of information active in short-term memory. The other is that maintenance rehearsal is one of a few tactics that young children can learn to use. If you do decide to teach rehearsal, we have two suggestions. First, remind young children that rehearsal is something that learners consciously decide to do when they want to remember things. Second, remind students to rehearse no more than 7 items or chunks at a time. Upper elementary grade students, 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, can be taught advanced forms of maintenance rehearsal, such as cumulative rehearsal, and forms of elaborate rehearsal, such as rehearsing sets of items that form homogeneous categories. As with younger students, provide several opportunities each week to practice these skills. As you prepare class presentations or encounter bits of information that students seem to have difficulty learning, ask yourself if a mnemonic device would be useful. You might write up a list of the devices discussed earlier and refer to it often. Part of the value of mnemonic devices is that they make learning easier. They are also fun to make up and use. Moreover, rhymes, acronyms, and acrostics can be constructed rather quickly. You might consider setting aside about 30 minutes 2 or 3 times a week to teach mnemonics. First, explain how rhyme, acronym, and acrostic mnemonics work, and then provide examples of each. Once students understand how the mnemonic is supposed to work, have them construct mnemonics to learn various facts and concepts. You might offer a prize for the most ingenious mnemonic. Teach students how to formulate comprehension questions. We concluded earlier that self-questioning could be an effective comprehension tactic if students were trained to write good comprehension questions and given opportunities to practice the technique. We suggest you try the following instructional sequence. Discuss the purpose of student-generated questions. Point out the differences between knowledge level questions and different types of comprehension level questions, such as analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. An excellent discussion of these types can be found in the Taxonomy of Educational Objectives, Handbook 1, Cognitive Domain. Explain and illustrate the kinds of responses that should be given to different types of comprehension level questions. Provide students with a sample paragraph and a set of high-level question stems. Have students formulate questions and responses either individually or in pairs. Provide corrective feedback. Give students short passages from which to practice. Provide corrective feedback. Teach students how to take notes. Despite the limitations of research on note-taking mentioned earlier, these suggestions should lead to more effective note-taking. Provide students with clear, detailed objectives for every reading assignment. The objectives should indicate what parts of the assignment to focus on and how that material should be processed, whether memorized, verbatim, reorganized, and paraphrased, or integrated with earlier reading assignments. Inform students that note-taking is an effective comprehension tactic when used appropriately. Think, for example, about a reading passage that is long and for which test items will demand analysis and synthesis of broad concepts, as in compare and contrast the economic, social, and political causes of World War I with those of World War II. Tell students to concentrate on identifying main ideas and supporting details, to paraphrase this information, and to record similarities and differences. Provide students with practice and corrective feedback in answering questions that are similar to those on the criterion test, meaning the test that assesses how well the students met the teacher's objectives. Establish the foundation for self-regulated learning in kindergarten and the primary grades. As we noted earlier, becoming a proficient self-regulated learner requires thousands of hours of instruction and experience spread over many years. Consequently, the foundation for SRL should be established in kindergarten and the primary grades. Two studies illustrate the benefits of such an approach and how it can be done. In the first study, first grade teachers who exhibited what was called a high mnemonic style were more likely than other teachers to do such tasks as ask students to predict what might happen next in a story, prompt recall of previously learned material, remind students to perform a certain task or operation, suggest the use of certain memory techniques, and explain why a particular learning tactic did or did not work. The result is that students of these teachers perform better on memory tasks at the end of the year than did students of so-called low mnemonic teachers. In the second study, kindergarten through third grade teachers whose classrooms were rated as high SRL classrooms emphasized student choice of activities, support in meeting academic challenges, a technique we referred to earlier in the book as scaffolding, and evaluation of oneself and classmates in a non-threatening, mastery-oriented environment. Here are some specific examples of how SRL-oriented instruction was carried out. Prior to an oral reading of the story The Three Little Pigs, students were allowed to decide whether to track the text with their fingers or their eyes. When a student had trouble decoding a word during an oral story reading, the teacher asked the other children in the group to suggest a solution. Then they tried each suggestion to see which one worked. Students were asked to create an alternative story ending for The Three Little Pigs. To help them meet this challenge, the teacher allowed students to share their ideas with a classmate and later with the teacher. The teacher recorded each child's idea on chart paper so everyone in the class could see everyone else's ideas. Kindergarten and first grade children who had trouble writing out their ideas for a writing assignment were encouraged to start with drawings as a way to plan and organize their ideas. In preparation for student parent-teacher conferences, students were asked to select samples of their work to share with parents and to reflect on what they could do now that they could not do earlier in the school year. To help second grade students choose and carry out a research topic, the teacher asked them to answer 3 questions. Am I interested in this topic? Can I find books about this topic? Can I read the books by myself, or will I need help from a friend or an adult? When teaching SRL skills, bear in mind the developmental limitations of younger students. If basic instruction in SRL skills is to begin as early as kindergarten, teachers need to acknowledge that because young children are more limited cognitively than older children, they will require more support and guidance. Dale Schunk suggests that teachers of primary and early elementary grade children do the following. Keep demonstrations and explanations of various skills and behaviors relatively short. As you or someone else models a skill, point out which aspects of the model's behaviors are more important than others. Set a series of short-term goals, each of which can be accomplished after a limited amount of instruction. Design your lessons to minimize interruptions and distractions, and periodically tell students that you believe they are capable learners. Periodically remind students to carry out a task more slowly, and think about the skills needed to complete the task. Provide verbal feedback about children's capabilities. For example, you're good at reading. Help students make appropriate attributions for success and failure by reminding them that effort is the primary cause of success and insufficient effort is the primary cause of failure. If you mention that ability also plays a role in performance, emphasize that ability is a set of learnable skills and not a fixed cognitive capacity. At least not the part that you're emphasizing. Provide students with clear guidelines for determining the appropriateness of their behavior and point out when they have and have not satisfied those guidelines. Embed instruction in SRL in interesting and challenging classroom tasks. Researchers suggest that if teachers want to teach their students SRL skills, they should embed their instruction in classroom tasks that are meaningful and that both illustrate and require students to use those skills. One such task where Judy Randy and Lynn Corno describe in detail is to analyze a story about a hero who has to undertake a dangerous journey and rely on personal resources to accomplish a goal. This is often called a journey tale. Two well-known examples from Greek literature are the Odyssey and Jason and the Argonauts. The students are then asked to draw parallels between the self-regulatory skills used by the story's hero and their own journeys as learners. For instance, just as Odysseus created a plan to escape from the Cyclops cave, students should first think about the steps they will need to take to accomplish a goal. Use effective strategy training programs such as reciprocal teaching, but be prepared to make adaptations to fit your particular circumstances. As an instructional tool, RT has at least two positive characteristics. It is defined by a set of clear components and procedures, and it has been demonstrated to improve reading comprehension in numerous studies. But as a 3-year study of 17 elementary grade teachers demonstrated, you may encounter some obstacles to implementing a textbook version of RT that will cause you to make some modifications in how you use it. In the study, only 3 teachers implemented RT as it is described in the literature. The remaining 14 teachers felt compelled to implement a modified form of the technique because of the problems they encountered. Here are the main obstacles encountered by many of the teachers and their solutions. Strategies use problems. Students' use of the 4 comprehension techniques of RT was infrequent or of low quality. For example, most of the questions posed by students were superficial and fact-oriented. Predictions were not logical, and clarifying comments were rarely made. Solutions: many teachers spent a great deal of time teaching students through explicit instruction and modeling how to formulate high-quality questions, and tried to stimulate use of clarifying by having students identify words and sentences they did not understand. Dialogue problems. Discussions among the students of the proper use of the 4 reading skills and the content of the reading passages were both limited and of low quality, largely due to their limited cooperative learning skills, but also because some students were shy about speaking in front of peers. Solutions: use whole class instruction and modeling. Teachers taught students how to be good listeners, to take turns talking, to reach a consensus about the details and meaning of a passage, and to give constructive feedback to one another. Scaffolding problems. Because of the previously mentioned problems with strategy use and dialogue, some teachers continue to provide a high level of support to students long beyond the point suggested by the literature on reciprocal teaching. The amount and duration of scaffolding were related to the age and reading ability of the students. Younger students and those with weaker reading skills required more scaffolding. Solutions. Teachers provided additional scaffolding through the whole class instruction, reading partnerships, modeling, allowing students more time to learn the elements of RT, writing predictions, clarifications, and summaries, and direct instruction of group skills. This study points to an interesting conclusion and lesson. The conclusion is that RT may well require more training, practice, and time than the literature suggests. The lesson, which echoes a basic theme of the first chapter of this book, is that even when a solid scientific basis exists for a particular technique, an effective implementation often requires those improvisational skills referred to as the art of teaching.